Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Welcome to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning. I'm Jake Hitt. I'm filling in for Shane. He's off in Dallas for his USFL duties, so I'll be filling in today for him. Coming to you live from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I'm joined today by Jacob Rudner of 24/7 Sports. How you doing today, Jacob?
I'm doing well, Jake. I appreciate you having me back on the show.
Hey, man, I try to get you on as much as possible. I love talking to you. So, look, I would like to excuse if I look exhausted. I was in Tampa last night. My dad and my uncle went to the game, and I went with them just to go to Tampa. And so we didn't get home until about 1:30 in the morning. So that was definitely not a good idea by me agreeing to do this show while being out so late. So
sounds like a,
yeah, but I mean, it definitely was a waste of time for me because the Bucks had just an absolutely, terrible day. Losing to Dallas the way they did, 31-14, and possibly the end of the Tom Brady era in Tampa Bay. I think most Tampa Bay fans would be really disappointed by how the season ended, but also if Tom Brady really is leaving, they won a Super Bowl. So if people always say they trade like millions of years of heartache as long as your team wins the championship. Wouldn't you say?
I mean, as a Rams fan, I suppose I'm best equipped to speak to that. It's interesting going from the highest of high to really a low. Super Bowl to not even making the playoffs is a lot to take in. I do think, though, that there's something to be said for winning the whole thing and how that feels, and going into it and the next season knowing that it was really a setup to just get the trophy. The Rams put themselves in a position to win and then kind of struggle a little bit. They went all in on one season. It worked great. They won the Super Bowl, and now they are where they are. So I guess it's an easier pill to swallow. I can imagine that it's much tougher when the team doesn't change a ton and you still have Tom Brady in the fold. But I would say that, yes, there is a degree to which winning the trophy is nice, and it kind of allows you to forgive some underperforming seasons if they come subsequently.
But if Tom Brady jumped ship, which Todd Bowles said he's going to talk to him after the season and all this stuff, see if he can get him to come back. The Bucks kind of did it in a different way. The Rams kind of sold their soul through draft picks, and the Bucks kind of sold their soul through the salary cap. They have a lot of guys with a lot of voidable years. So if they split, that's a lot of dead cap space for them. So and that'll basically be the end for several years to come. And it just felt like a microcosm last night watching the Bucks, because it was the same thing that happened every single time. Offense couldn't get going, defense was giving up big plays, and just felt like nothing was clicking, which is probably the best way to describe the entire season for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's tough. I think watching the game last night was interesting because there were times in which Tom Brady, or really the majority of it, just felt so outmatched. And I don't know that there's a ton of times that you can look back throughout his career where that was really, really the case. I don't remember a ton of games where you watch Tom Brady play and you go, man, this guy is out of it, or man, this guy has no shot. Dallas played a great game. I think, you could speak to the offense that Dallas put together to allow themselves to kind of run away with it. But I would also say that defensive performance was just as impressive. Parsons is a phenomenal player. I think that they put together overall a great package against a great player, and it worked. And so it just goes to show you that if you play to the scout and you stick to your game plan, it can work. So good for Dallas.
I think Tampa really played in their hands too because they threw the ball 66 times, and I don't think that's what the Cowboys. I think that's what the Cowboys really want you to do. They want you to throw the ball as much as possible so the pass rush can get in. They can take away passing lanes, like Daniel's saying on Facebook Live, and their ball hawking defensive backs can grab the ball. I mean, I don't know any team that can win and throw the ball 66 times and win a football game.
It can be done. I mean, you
A
can
non-air raid football team. How about that?
Sure. I think that there were Denver teams when Peyton Manning was there who that threw the ball a ton and they won games. But to your point, I do think that Tampa Bay isn't necessarily built to do that at the moment. I can see why people might think that they are with a guy like Tom Brady and the receivers that they have, and a running back in Rashad White who does look very good on passing plays. I can see why you might want to try and air it out that much, but I would say that there were times in which Rashad White was very successful on the ground. So it was interesting to me to see them kind of shy away from the ground game as much as they did. And this is the consequence. I think that we can now, in hindsight, with the power of hindsight, see that was probably a mistake.
Yeah. Cowboys will move on. They get to play San Francisco. So congratulations. You win a playoff game. You get to go play basically one of the hottest teams in the NFC.
Yep.
And then Daniel Jones and the New York Football Giants, they all head to Philadelphia to face the 1 seed Eagles. And then anybody else wondering, Bills will play the Bengals, and then the Jags, Jacob, they're heading to Kansas City. I can't believe the Jags are going to do that after Saturday's performance.
Good for them. I stand with the Jags this playoff season. I think that it's a fun little story. Trevor Lawrence is clearly proven the people who thought he wasn't the guy wrong. Good for Doug Peterson, I guess. Just a nice turnaround for a city that I'm sure wanted one. It's a good-looking team. I think it'd be really fun if they can mess around and advance. But this is a tough assignment.
I think every TV executive at Fox, if they saw Kansas City lose, would probably just go home for the day and just not worry about that, knowing that one of the biggest ratings cows for them is absolutely gone. So, Jacob, I think the big thing with Florida news right now has been the Jaden Rashada saga. I was just wondering if you have any update on that kind of ensuing issue for Florida.
Yeah, I think there are going to be a lot of Florida fans who don't want to hear me say it, but really there's no update right now. It's a really complex situation in which, as has been reported widely, is tied to NIL. I have been telling people, Jake, behind the scenes, that this to me is a real landmark case. I don't know that we've seen anything quite like this in the past. I'm not so sure we'll see things like it in the future. I think that this will have repercussions that cause teams to, whether it's treat NIL differently throughout the recruiting process, whether it changes their process with regard to NIL entirely. I think those are things that are on the table. I don't think that there are schools that want to follow a similar path to what's going on at Florida right now. But that being said, to answer your question, no, we really don't know any updates. The latest is that Jaden Rashada remains unenrolled. Today is January 17th. It is past the date that people thought would be necessary in order for him to enroll. I will say that it's not necessarily true. The drop dead date that I've heard is January 23rd. So there is still time. Does it look likely that Jaden Rashada ends up resolving this and Florida ends up resolving this and he ends up at the university? I don't know. I'd say it's unlikely at this point. I think any logical person would say the same. Do I think that it's a bad look for Florida? I've been asked that a lot. I don't know that I would necessarily say that without considering a lot of other things. I think we need to learn a lot more about the situation. I think we need to see it through. And we aren't necessarily close to that. I haven't heard anything about a resolution coming anytime soon. I haven't necessarily even heard if missing this January 23rd deadline will prevent him from ending up at Florida. Is it possible that he enrolls for the summer session? Maybe. We don't really know yet. So there's stuff to be learned. There are things to be seen. And I think we're going to get some answers in the next week or so. But as of right now, there is no update.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard position that Billy Napier's in. I mean, do you keep chasing after the kid, trying to get him to come on campus, to stay? Do you just play hardball and say, no, we're not going to grant your release if he ever asks for a release? Because apparently, according to his father, he hasn't done that. Or do you just cut him loose at that point? You know, thinking that the relationship is unsalvageable beyond repair. You know, Chris wants wants Florida just to move on. Chris on Facebook Live wants Florida just to move on and not worry about that. Joseph's floated Walker Howard, so I did want to ask you, if Jaden Rashada, either for whatever reason he's granted his release and pursues another team, or he comes onto campus and immediately enters the transfer portal, what do you think Florida does after that?
It's a good
Do they
question.
go after a guy like Walker Howard?
It's a good question. I think that they should. I have heard that Walker Howard could be closer to a decision elsewhere. So how that impacts Florida's plans remains to be seen. There are options, though. Former Washington quarterback Sam Heward is a former 5-star who's also in the transfer portal. We haven't heard his name linked necessarily to Florida yet, but I think that could change. I think that Florida will need to figure out some sort of solution to bring in a 4th scholarship quarterback. Billy Napier has said explicitly, we need 4 scholarship guys at all times. He said that that's the minimum. He said that the school could at times even carry up to 5 on scholarship in its quarterback room. So it remains to be seen exactly what the school will do. But to answer that question, and it's a good one, they will need to bring in somebody. I think that this would be a wholly understaffed quarterback room without that. And whether that's a transfer, another high school kid, I don't know quite yet. I think that we need to still wait and see what's going to happen with this Rashada situation before that becomes clear. And eventually, when it does, I would tell you that they will need to bring in another body. Yes.
Do you think it would be? What do you think is more likely? They bring them in through the transfer portal, or they pick up another kid? They take a flyer on a kid out of high school, or maybe they go the JUCO route.
Yeah, good question. I think as we get later and later, it will lean more towards JUCO or high school. I think that the best and most viable transfer options are guys that they're going to want to start to jump on soon, if not now. As we get closer to spring ball and as some of these quarterbacks have already determined locations in the transfer portal, that might not be the best place to look for another quarterback at the University of Florida. It could be in the school's interest at that point to either go to the JUCO or the high school route and find somebody who they think is underrated, who didn't get enough attention in the recruiting process, and try and find a diamond in the rough 1-year solution type player. So I would say it's all about time here, and it'll depend on when this has a resolution, when Florida really starts to get aggressive with bringing in that 4th player to the room. But I would say as of right now, I would say transfer.
So you don't think it's likely that Billy Napier just goes, well, can't get anybody, so let's just roll with Graham Mertz and hope Max is ready?
I personally don't think so. And if I'm being blunt with the people listening to this right now, I would say that would be a mistake. I don't think that it's a good decision to have 3 quarterbacks for the season. I would try and be pretty aggressive to add a 4th. It doesn't necessarily hurt your roster. And you never know who you're going to need and when you're going to need them. He himself has said that this team needs 4 quarterbacks on scholarship. And so bending that pretty soon after saying it to me is moving the goalposts. So if you need 4 quarterbacks, you need 4 quarterbacks, and Florida will have to do that simply.
And so I got a question on Facebook Live here for you, Jacob. Brian's just wondering, why is it so unlikely that things will not work out with Jaden Rashada?
I think it's just a matter of time. And it's a fair question. I think that as we watch the situation unfold, as it gets deeper and deeper into the process, by nature, it will become less likely. And Jaden Rashada's father has said as much. The longer this goes on, the less likely it is that he ends up in a Florida uniform. I think that this is a family that's eager to get him enrolled. I think that this is a family that is eager to find him a situation that is going to work out in their opinion, in addition to the school's opinion. And as things stand right now, Florida is not that place. The 2 sides are not coming together on a solution to whatever it is exactly the problem. And they'll need to do that. And so as long as it, goes on here, I can't imagine that they're getting too much closer. or else we would have had a resolution that would have made this a somewhat easy transition. So is it possible that he ends up at Florida? Absolutely. And I'm not saying that that's not the case. Does it become less likely with time? Also, yes, though.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a tricky situation too in terms of trying to get him on campus. Look, I know teams want to like kind of stockpile as much talent as they can, but they also have a guy in DJ Lagway coming in next year. So I'm wondering at what point they just figure, well, batten down the hatches and just hold on until DJ Lagway gets on campus.
I mean, again, I think I go back to the comment from Billy Napier that was, we need 4 quarterbacks at all times. Well, at all times is at all times. And so if you need 4 quarterbacks, you got to have 4 quarterbacks. I think that Florida would be justified to try and find somebody who either has a year of eligibility left or somebody who could potentially transfer again after this upcoming season, more of a stopgap. That would totally make sense to me. But again, if you need 4, then you got to have 4. And so I don't think the solution is just to wait for Lagway. I will say this, though, and throw it out there as a dark horse situation. And I have to be clear, I have not heard that this is happening. So let's be on the record in saying that this is not something that I'm saying is in the works or anything like that. However, let's just to have an interesting conversation here. What if Florida were to try and convince DJ Lagway, listen, we need you to reclassify. We need you to do whatever it takes to take the classes before June to allow you to enroll over the summer, and you are our 4th quarterback, which would A, give them 4 quarterbacks, B, would give them a 2023 quarterback out of the high school ranks, and C, would allow them to recruit another player at the position in 2024. So food for thought. Again, not something I'm reporting is happening, but just something to think about.
That would be really interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that on 11th hour kind of, hey, we need you to reclassify and come in during the summer and join us now. I mean, I don't think a kid's ever mentally prepared for that.
It's not common. It's not common, but neither is a situation where your star signee is not going to end up on campus due to an NIL dispute. We've never seen that before. So desperate times call for desperate measures. I think that Lagway is a very talented quarterback who a lot of people would say has the potential to be somebody very elite by the time his college career is done. You're not going to be hurt by developing with college coaching for an extra year. So he's not somebody who would be pressured into a starting role right away. They have Graham Mertz for that. If Mertz, for whatever reason, doesn't work out, then you default to Jack Miller. But having DJ Lagway on campus, A, gives you your 4th quarterback, but B, the development opportunities increase. The longer he's on campus, the more you can develop him. Sounds like a pretty sweet backup plan to me. I think that it'd be something worth exploring if it hasn't been already. I think it's something worth exploring for the school and could offer them a viable solution to the position.
According to our Facebook Live comments, he's already been tweeted that he's trying to graduate early. So maybe that might already be in the works. Who knows?
There you go.
Are you in the market to buy or sell your home? Doreen Weeby, a realtor with Coldwell Banker MM Parish, will provide you with fast, friendly, and reliable service. Call her today at 352-562-1411 to help your dreams come home. Jacob, all this transfer talk, Florida did pick up a transfer just yesterday in Damian George, tackle from Alabama. It seems they're starting to get that offensive line retooled. They've added a different transfer out of Baylor, and now George. It seems to be that they're starting to find bodies to replace the ones they lost already.
Yeah, I think that they're putting together a solid group. Micah Masua is the Baylor offensive lineman you're talking about. Damian George is a nice add as well. I think that this is a guy who Florida could benefit from just given his experience in the SEC. That matters, even if he didn't necessarily play great in his starting experience in the conference. He does have that experience. And something I posted about on my website yesterday was Florida's offensive line coaching duo of Rob Sale and Darnell Stapleton has a pretty solid reputation dating back to their Louisiana days of talent identification and talent development. They have done a very good job of seeing guys who other schools might not see the value in, taking them in and extracting their maximum potential. O'Cyrus Torrence is a fantastic example of that. Max Mitchell, who's currently with the New York Jets, is another very good example of that. They have others. Robert Hunt is a former Louisiana offensive lineman who basically went under recruited, and they got him drafted. They do have a very solid reputation. And so does George impress me right out of the box? Not necessarily. I think impress is a really strong word. I think he's a good player with potential. And I think that that's what this school needs right now. I will remind people this is a rebuild. They are still in a rebuild process. And so getting stars is nice. It's not necessarily what's needed right now. I think that Florida is in a position where it's still trying to grow its program. I think that this is a guy in George who has 2 years of eligibility, who should probably use both of them. And Florida's coaches who do have that reputation that I just mentioned now have a chance to develop this guy. So I like George as a developmental addition. I do think he's somebody who could turn into a very productive tackle for Florida in the SEC, and is somebody who I would expect to start right away. I think that he will be slotted into one of the tackle positions opposite Austin Barber. It's a good addition.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they're going to do with Austin Barber, whether they're going to move him over to the left side or just keep him at the right side where he took over from Michael Tarquin, who then eventually, transferred to USC. So getting George back kind of fills that Tarquin hole. But then Masua coming in at guard, you would venture to think that replaces either O'Cyrus Torrence or Ethan White on that line.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Richie Leonard is who I would expect to start opposite him. I like Micah Masua a lot. If I were to go through all of Florida's transfer additions of the offseason so far, easily my favorite. I think Masua is a fantastic run blocker. I think that he has the potential to develop into an excellent pass protector as well. This is a guy who I believe is borderline all-conference caliber style player. I think that he jumps in, and if you look at Florida's offensive line as is right now, is immediately its best player. I think that he kind of becomes that anchor point of the line at the guard spot, similar to how Torrance was that for Florida in year one under this coaching staff. If you want to talk about true, excellent, not a lot of questions, really know what you're going to get transfer additions, this is the guy in Florida's class. I like Micah Masua a lot. I think he has great potential, and I am excited to see what he can do.
Right. And I'm sure people are very happy to see that, they're going to be able to find a guy who can replace those two valuable guard positions that they had, because, Ethan White, for all his bumps and bruises with the injuries, is a multi-year player on the interior of that offensive line. And him just stepping away and leaving, leaves a big hole that you probably weren't expecting if you're a Florida fan. So being able to bring in a guy like Micah Masua can really kind of, bring some peace of mind, not just to a coaching staff, but to a fan base that maybe, you can kind of salvage the offensive line here, because it was just a couple weeks ago that people were probably thinking that the line was in dire straits with so many guys exiting.
Yeah, and they'd be right to feel that way. I think that there was a time in which Florida's offensive line was looking really poor. I think the depth was not good at the position. I would also say that there are reasonable questions still with this offensive line. I think that there is a gap between what it can be and what it is right now. You can look at a guy like George as a great example of that. Lots of potential. At the moment, is he a superstar? No, not even close. His footwork is not tremendous. I think that his body positioning occasionally gets away from him. But those are fixable things that I just said. Those are the kinds of things that if you're trying to develop a player and make him better, that's probably the kind of stuff you want to have red flags on, is the footwork, is the body positioning, because that's coachable. And I think that Florida's coaching duo at the position is capable of that. I would say that there are other guys who are kind of like that on the line too. Richie Leonard, there's a gap between, I think, what he can be and what he is. Kingsley Eguikon, I think, is another guy who has a gap between what he can be and what he is, and is benefited quite a bit by having another season under this coaching staff. I do like where this group is headed. I think spring ball will be crucial in doing what I just said, though, in bridging that gap between reality and potential, getting a lot of work in with these guys and kind of bringing them up to speed for what the team needs. It's a solid group right now.
I definitely agree. Gator fans, come honor Florida legend Steve Spurrier as Steve Spurrier Way is officially unveiled on February 10th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. on the promenade in front of Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. Go Gators! Also, Sonny Dykes, I want to point that out. Sonny Dykes winning the Steve Spurrier Award. Him and Freshman Player of the Year Drake May are actually going to be honored 10 days after that at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill as well. So just, want to throw that out there a little bit. Jacob, what do you see Florida kind of going after in the portal, here from now on, now that they've got these two offensive linemen through it? Probably still stay at that position.
I don't necessarily know if they're going to recruit another offensive lineman. They're at 17 overall on scholarship right now, which is kind of in that zone of numbers where you're fine with it. If they feel good about this group, I could see them stopping here. They bring in a couple freshmen. I believe it's 4 freshmen off the top of my head. You have 2 transfers. The room numbers are healthy. I'm not so sure that that's the next biggest priority. I wouldn't mind seeing the team add a wide receiver. I think that that's a position that is pretty thin, but the glaring red flag must add now, put talent in this room and help it, is edge. That jack linebacker position is exceptionally thin with just 3 scholarship players at the moment. That is a room that is in desperate need of depth, unless they're going to change kind of how they operate and use that spot as more of a true edge rusher who doesn't have as many coverage responsibilities. But as according to the original formula for this Patrick Toney defense, that position is a hybrid role. It is a jack linebacker who has pass rush responsibilities and does function as an edge rusher, but is also asked to drop into coverage and go cover tight ends in the flat and has some coverage responsibilities. If they're going to lessen those coverage responsibilities and really make that player an edge rusher, sure, I think they're in a better spot than they might look like they're in with just 3 guys on the team. If they need coverage responsibility out of that player, though, that room is not sufficiently built right now. That is where I think we need to see some movement. I would say that edge first, adding a wide receiver would be probably second to that, just to add more talent to that room and kind of bolster its numbers. And then after that, I think it gets kind of interesting. I could see them adding a running back. Tough sell, though, in the portal, to try and tell guys that you're going to come in and play behind players like Montreal Johnson and Trevor Etienne. Doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of daylight for a new player at that position. So, those are the spots that I would say should be focuses. It's really that edge for me, though. That is where things are still kind of dire.
Sorry about that.
I think I lost you there for a second.
I don't know what I did. Sometimes the internet, the working online doesn't really work out. Are we on still?
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm going to assume we're back. Anyway, so just go back to what you were saying there, Jacob. I apologize for the technical difficulties there.
No worries. Basically, what I was saying is that Florida needs to add an edge rusher, somebody who can play that jack linebacker position and be a full service jack, somebody who can go and play coverage, but also, fully suffice the edge rushing responsibility, the pass rushing responsibility there.
Yeah, I think, look, more often than not, your biggest problems in football today are getting to the passer and then preventing the pass. So getting a guy who can do both at that jack linebacker position, you can have a guy kind of be able to drop in coverage and not just have to, worry about sitting there and get after the quarterback. And that kind of limits the packages he can play in. Having that versatility is really, really, important to a football team that utilizes that role, especially when you get to the next level and you're going to be asked to drop into coverage. You're going to be asked to guard the flat or those short routes there in front of the first down. So who do you think Florida, do you have any names that maybe would be on the list for that?
Honestly, right now, no. We have not heard of a ton of names at those positions that I just mentioned. I don't have any targets who are close with Florida at the moment. No visit plans are clear. The last edge that they were truly in the works with was Gilbert Edmond out of South Carolina. He has found a new home, though, Florida State. That I'm not sure. No, the answer is there are no names at the moment. I think that that's something that we could see pick up a little more in the second portal period, which is springtime. This portal period, I believe, actually closes on January 18th. So there's only really
That's
a day
tomorrow.
left. Yeah. So that would make it challenging to find another name in this cycle, but there is another. So I would say that is probably more likely then.
Gotcha. Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. And tell you about Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Visit them at peachlanddental.com and join Shane and JC on Friday for their JC in the QB weekend picks. That's getting down to the wire. They're running out of football games to pick there. So I think we're going to take a break here and come back, and we'll have a little bit more Jacob Rudner for you from 24/7 Sports. So we'll see you in a minute. Pay some bills. Maybe. Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, sorry. We're good. Are we in break?
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
And we're back. Once again, apologize for any technical difficulties that people might be experiencing. The internet is a fickle thing that nobody really understands. So, Jacob, another thing that I think people can't really understand is how Florida started so subpar to start the year, and now in basketball has kind of, found its rhythm.
I think there are a couple factors here. The first is I think people need to consider who Florida was playing and when Florida played them. You just think about the opponents here. Florida plays UConn. Florida plays Xavier. Florida plays West Virginia. Florida plays one of the hottest teams in the country right now, Florida Atlantic, Oklahoma. These are all very, very good teams. A loss to Texas A&M. A&M is on fire right now and climbing up the ladder quick. Florida has one of the toughest strengths of schedule in the country. I believe it's the second toughest schedule in the SEC, behind only Alabama. and it's a brand new team with a brand new coach trying to figure out how to work with each other, trying to figure out how to work with their coach. And you combine that with playing top 25 teams night in and night out to start your season, it's going to be pretty tough to find wins early on. There's a reason, I would say, that Florida at 10-7 overall is ranked among the top 45 teams nationally on a site like KenPom, despite at one point having a 500 record and going on a 3-game losing streak and losing 4 of 5 at one point. There is a reason for that. I think that Florida showed signs early, but wasn't able to finish games. And I think now we're starting to see what it looks like when this team is able to put itself in a position to win and then close out a game. This defense that they run is fantastic. For those who weren't really following it closely in the preseason, Todd Golden basically labels himself the defensive coordinator. He runs what Florida does defensively, while Kevin Hovde, one of his assistants, is like the offensive coordinator. Golden's defense is tremendous. They rank in the top 20 in most categories that matter defensively. I think that it has quite directly won them some games and is a reason behind their hot streak right now. And then the other thing is that with the offense, a lot of people hear me say that Kevin Hovde, the assistant, runs that, and they go, well, he's no good. No, I disagree with you. I think that he is running a good offense. I think he is getting Florida players open looks from the field, especially from 3-point range. But Florida's guys aren't knocking him down at the moment, and that's okay. I think that they're learning how to work together. They're learning what works for them and what doesn't still. You have to remember, when you replace as many guys as they do, it could take a minute to really get acclimated and get your feet under you. And we're starting to see the byproduct of that. Now that Florida is starting to kind of get into a rhythm here, they do look really good on the court. And the last thing that I think that they need to solve is how they start games. Anybody who watches is pretty disappointed, I think, in Florida's first 6 to 8 minutes of action. Still look pretty lackluster. Once they get that together, this is a team I think that could contend for a spot in the AP top 25. And for those who think that their NCAA tournament hopes are dead, I disagree. Florida is 10-1 outside of quad 1 games. So between quad 2, 3, and 4, they have lost one time. And they're 0-6 in quad 1. So strength of schedule should be a factor here. I do like Florida's chances to reach the tournament if they can get a win against Texas A&M tomorrow in College Station, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, the Gators 14th in KenPom's defensive efficiency rating. That's a 70-spot jump from where they were at around the time of Feast Week. We got a couple of Facebook Lives. John saying that if Florida had LSU or Georgia's schedule, they'd probably be top 25 with 3 or 4 losses. The Florida played a really rough stretch, and just seeing teams where they're ranked now compared to like November, December, you show like, man, Florida caught a really good team that nobody really knew about because they didn't have a number next to their name.
I mean, Florida Atlantic is a prime example. Florida Atlantic cracked the top 25 yesterday officially. Somebody can correct me on the Facebook Live, but I believe they're actually 25th. Regardless, top 25 team. I think they've won now 16 straight games. They're 16-1 or 17-1, something like that. Dusty May, a former Florida assistant, really has those guys rolling. That's not going to end up looking like a terrible loss for the Gators come end of season. Do you want to go 0-6 in quad 1 games and lose a pretty decent chunk of your non-conference schedule? No, of course not. And I'm not trying to convince anybody that that's a good thing. However, am I saying that this team is in a better spot than people are giving it credit for? Yes, I do think so. I do think that it's a better 10-7 than it looks like on paper. And their tournament hopes are alive as a result.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this win against Missouri is really a big time deal. Florida getting its first ranked win under, Todd Golden, and Colin Castleton maybe has found himself again here, winning SEC Player of the Week. I had a tweet from Denver Parlor that I wanted to share. If nobody has seen it, I just had it. Colin Castleton, the only player this century to post at least 16 points, 13 boards, 6 assists and 3 steals with 2 block shots versus an AP top 25 opponent. So I think him getting back into form is going to go a big way for this team. But I want to talk about, and I talked about this with Graham, your counterpart, probably a couple weeks ago, the resurgence or the renaissance of Myron Jones. I absolutely love it. It's a fantastic arc for the kid who really struggled through his first year at Florida, didn't see a lot of success in terms of being consistent with it. So now seeing him kind of be able to ratchet it up and play the way he has, I don't know, it just gives me the warm and fuzzies because it's paying off for him right now.
It's paying off for him, and it's paying off for Todd Golden, who I think deserves a lot of credit. There were many people who were calling for, and I'm talking as high up as, you know, some respected names in the media circles who were basically calling for Myron Jones' minutes to dry up. They didn't want to see him on the court anymore. They had given up on the guy, and Todd Golden didn't seem to care. Todd Golden just kept on going. He kept putting Myron Jones in the spots he thought he could succeed, the spots he had the potential to succeed, and now it's paying off. So this is a prime example of the coach knowing what he has in a player, maintaining his conviction that he's correct, and giving the player the opportunity necessary to really get his feet under him. And this is what happens. Myron Jones is a critical player in Florida's lineup right now. I don't think that Florida goes on its little 3-0 run with these 3 straight SEC wins without Myron Jones playing the way that he's been playing. This is a guy who allows Kyle Lofton, the team's point guard, to operate at maximum efficiency because teams have to worry about Jones with the ball in his hands. And now Florida has 2 guys on the court who can make a difference holding the ball. Florida has a lot of players who are excellent without the ball in their hands. Will Richard is one of those guys who really can't create his own shot, but is a very good job of shooting off of a pass. A catch and shoot type guy who has the potential to be very knockdown. Colin Castleton is not necessarily a guy you want with the ball in his hands a whole bunch. Alex Fudge is somebody who is tremendous in a lot of the same ways as Castleton around the rim. A high-flying, athletic guy, capable of getting those blocks, but is also not really a guy you want ball handling. That leaves Florida with really just 2 or 3 guys who you can trust to give them the ball and allow them to create. That's Trey Bonham, Kyle Lofton, and Myron Jones. And with Myron Jones playing as well as he's playing right now, it really does a whole bunch for Kyle Lofton's game, and we've seen that in this little stretch right now. And I like where Florida's headed as a result of that. So yes, props to Myron Jones for really getting up to where I think a lot of people thought he was capable, but just as equal credit to his coach, Todd Golden, for proving why he's the coach.
Yeah, and as a Niles Lane stan, it kind of tears my heart out seeing him do so well because that means my boy's not going to get any minutes. But you can't play a guy who's so limited offensively, or at least a guy who's not like Myron Jones, just for his defensive capabilities here. So Florida, I feel like Florida's got a really tough stretch coming up. You know, they got to go to A&M, and then right after that, they got to go to Starkville and play Mississippi State. A little bit of a reprieve against South Carolina. Then they're in Manhattan, the Keontae Johnson Bowl, people will refer to it as, and then finish it out with playing basically 2 top 5 teams and a team that is uber talented on the road with Tennessee, Kentucky, and at Alabama. So this could be, if Florida could come out of this with a reasonable record in terms of these 8 games or 6 games that they're going to play, it could be a really good sign for Florida for the end stretch here.
Yeah, this is a big stretch. I think that Florida will need to steal a win or 2 over the next 7 games if it wants to make the tournament. Just to go through all of that exactly, it's away against A&M, which is one of the hottest teams in the country, away against Mississippi State, home game against a not very good South Carolina team that you really can't lose to, but it doesn't help you if you win because you're expected to do so. Away Kansas State, home Tennessee, away Kentucky, away Alabama. That is a brutal stretch of games against teams that are very, very good. If I'm Florida, I'm really hoping to win the next 3. Beat Texas A&M on the road to steal that game back. Beat Mississippi State, which to me is kind of a toss-up game. on the road. That's a nice win. Should go into the quad 1 category for both of those two, which is huge, seeing as though Florida is 0-6. You have the South Carolina game at home, must win, 100% must win, but something that Florida should win. And then you try and steal one of the next 4: Kansas State, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama. I think Kentucky is the most winnable game out of that mix, just based on how they've looked so far this year. And if you can go 1-3 in that stretch, plus a quick little 3-0 run here over the next 3, or even 2-1, really, this team is in really good shape. I would say that the minimum record, not necessarily minimum, but what you should really be shooting for here is 3-4 at worst. That would give you 2 wins in the next 3 and 1 of the next 4 after that. So Florida is not in as bad of a position as a lot of fans have tried to make it seem. I do think that this is a team in a decent spot, not great, but decent. And this next stretch of 7 games could go a long way in positioning them either on the bubble or putting them into the tournament, really.
Exactly. And the thing with this like stretch that they have, it's 3 games that are like, it's 2 games that are not extremely hard, but they're not easy by any stretch. And then you get to play Carolina, which you play them right before you play Kansas State, which would mean you have to make sure you're not looking past them for the trip to Manhattan and what will be kind of a big time matchup for Florida, with it being the team Keontae Johnson's on, and it being the SEC Big 12 Challenge. And then it's just the gauntlet after that you got to run. You get Tennessee at home, but it's Tennessee. They're really good in the regular season. For some reason, cannot put it together in the month of March. And then you got to go to Rupp. It's never easy to play in Rupp. And then you have to finish with one of the best teams in the country in Alabama, and you got to go to Tuscaloosa to do it.
It's a brutal stretch, and that's why I go back to Florida. This next stretch of 3 games for Florida is really crucial. If you can beat Texas A&M and Mississippi State on the road, those are both quad 1 victories. Those go a long way on your resume. So, if you can secure those, get to 2-6 overall in quad 1, you get your win over South Carolina, which is not a very impactful win. That gives you a lot of leeway to not have the best stretch of 4 games. I think that, again, you probably still want to win one of them. And that Kentucky game is the one that's circled for me as the most possible. But again, if Florida were to go 0-4 over that stretch, I don't know that it kills their chances either, because you look at the stretch of, I think, what's after that, 7 games or 8 games, it looks really good for Florida. I believe off the top of my head, Florida is only the underdog analytically in 1 of its final 7 games. And other than that, it's projected to win those. So Florida has an opportunity, in my opinion, here to win 18 games, 19 games in the regular season. You go to the SEC tournament and you win one of those games, depending on who you beat overall throughout the season and in the tournament. Again, I think it looks okay for Florida's postseason chances.
Yep. And at Comfort Temp, Comfort is their business. Peace of mind is their promise. Beat the summer heat. It's not summer right now, but eventually it's coming. Florida. You're not extremely experienced with it, but it sucks. I don't know if you know that. But beat the summer heat. Schedule your air conditioners tune up today, keeping you chill and the Florida heat far away. Comfort Temp Heating and Air. Call them at 352-376-2366. And with Comfort Temp comes the This Day in Sports segment. This day in sports, Jacob, 1971, the Baltimore Colts defeat the Dallas Cowboys in Miami in Super Bowl 5. Chuck Howley named MVP. He was a linebacker for the Cowboys. How about that? You lose the Super Bowl and you get MVP. It's kind of like, might as well just throw that in the trash, right?
That must suck. That must not feel great.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is the game. Now, somebody older than me can correct me. This is the game that Dallas had to wear their blue uniforms. They had to wear the blue with the gray, and that was when they were designated as the home team. That was the game that decided we're never wearing blue as the home team ever again. We will wear white every single time, and it started that tradition for them. So
I believe Dallas is like 2-6 in the playoffs wearing blue. Yeah, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I
was probably one of those wins coming last night.
Yeah, my 2-6 includes last night. Yes.
So it's funny how superstitions like that work out for you. So dude got a question on Facebook Live asking why Missouri's not a quad one win, even though they're ranked. They're just not in the net ranking. So quad one win, if nobody knows, home team, if you're playing them at home, it has to be within the net 30, right? And then if you're playing them a neutral site, it's 50, and then away is 75. So Missouri sitting at 53, it just doesn't count.
It's a different ranking. That's the quadrant system is dependent on the net, not the AP poll.
Well, it's more that even though they're ranked, their net ranking isn't necessarily the greatest. So they're benefiting from not playing as good a teams as they should, or not beating them as well as they need to.
Somebody said it on the Facebook Live comments. If Florida had played Georgia or LSU schedule, Florida's probably or even Missouri's schedule, Florida's also probably ranked at this point in the year, but it doesn't make them necessarily a quad one win, which is why, by the way, at the top of our little basketball conversation here, I did mention immediately where Florida was ranked in KenPom, because again, records and AP rankings, those are kind of deceiving, and they're dependent on how people are feeling and what's going on in the moment. Whereas things like KenPom give you a little more of a concrete look, and Florida is 44th overall. So Florida is viewed as a very good team.
Yeah, and you want to stay in the top 50 there, because that's really the cream of the crop when you look at KenPom. KenPom doesn't care about your feelings, Jacob.
No.
If you've got joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hips, or back, that won't go away. You need to check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief. No surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics with locations in Ocala and now open in Gainesville. 352-400-4550. So, Jacob, as we're getting down here, we started it with NFL talk. Let's end it with NFL talk, because I don't know if you're going to be back on the show. I don't know if I'll be back on the show this week. Who you got in the divisional games? We'll start with the NFC. You got Dallas going to San Fran, and then there's the Giants going to Philadelphia.
I'll start with the easy one. I like Philly. I like Philly a lot to win that game. The other one's tough, but I'm going to give it to Dallas. I think Dallas keeps the little hot streak alive. I like how Dak looked last night, so I'm going to say Dallas.
I'd be inclined to think that. My dad's a Dallas fan, so I might do it just for him. The thing is, the legend of Brock Purdy continues to grow. So can the Dallas pass rush kind of get in his head a little bit and kind of make him start missing these wide open receivers that the Shanahan offense, which probably should be outlawed at this rate because it's so good, is creating for him. And then you go over to the AFC side, you got Bills, Bengals, and you got Jags, Chiefs. How do you feel about those?
Well, I'll start with the Bills. I don't know how many Bills fans are listening, but I grew up a Bills fan. Was a Bills fan my whole life. Rams moved to LA, which is where I lived at the time, or where I'm from. And so I jumped on the bandwagon when the Rams came to Los Angeles. However, there's still a soft spot in my heart for the Bills. So go Bills. And I think they're going to win that one. And then let's do it for the people of Duval here, Jake. I'm going to give it to the Jags. I don't actually think that, but I think the Chiefs are going to win. My head says Chiefs, my heart says Jags. So I'll go with my heart on this one. Go Jags.
You're rooting for chaos here, I see.
I'm rooting for chaos. Let's do it.
My buddy's contemplating. He has like miles credit that's going to expire, and he's got a cousin who lives in Kansas City. He's thinking about, as a lone Jags fan, flying to KC, staying with his cousin, and just blowing the money on nosebleeds to see the Jags in Arrowhead.
Do it.
That's what I told him to do. He just doesn't want to get, he just doesn't want to be in a hostile environment by himself.
Fair. That's fair.
And then rounding out the show here, tell you about Ruse Ogra. Ruse Ogra State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com or call them at 352-240-1779. Getting out at the end of the show here, I want to thank Jacob for hanging out with us the whole hour. He's been a real trooper getting up this early. Want to thank everybody who commented, who watched. Make sure to stream this where you get your podcast. If you want to come back and listen to Jacob and I's silky smooth voices here at 7 o'clock in the morning. But that'll do it for our show today. I want to thank Shane for the opportunity as well. And yeah, we'll get out of here right now, pay some bills.